Hello and welcome to Brainwaves episode 39, bringing you the best in board game and tabletop gaming news. I'm Jamie Adams.
And I'm Iain McAllister, and I've got exciting plans for a convention, Jamie. What do you think? I mean, I thought we'd hire maybe the Royal Concert Hall in Edinburgh, maybe, or maybe the Lyceum Theatre. I think we might need a bigger venue, actually. Maybe Murrayfield, like a really sort of big area.
Iain, the cast is, we're about a year and a half old now. And you're immediately thinking of a convention? Or what are you thinking? A load of tables and just everyone else will sort it out themselves? I mean, if it works for Glasgow Games Festival.
Yeah, I mean, I thought something like that, but I think we can definitely get a larger group of people in. And our convention correspondent's back from Essen. Hello, Mark. Mark Cooke's here. Pull up a seat, Mark. We're just talking about our plans for a big, sort of huge, sort of Murrayfield-style convention. Really, really large. You can see some of the plans here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think just go for it, really, isn't it? It is just chucking a load of tables in a room. See who turns up.
Thank you. See, that's what I said.
Yeah, I think that's what they do at Essen. It's just a bigger room.
A much, much bigger room. How was Essen?
It's busy, yeah. I got to meet lots of lovely people, and I bought lots of games, so it's always good. Saw lots of new games, as you do at Essen. So Essen is Essen. It's its own thing.
And when you're not out in the world reporting for the Giant Brain, you're also running the Airecon convention down in Harrogate, aren't you?
I do, yeah. So it's coming up in March next year. We are a growing convention, but more focused on playing games, rather than Essen is a big fair of commercial buying games. So it's kind of a different kind of vibe.
Fantastic. And how many sort of people are you expecting in 2020? Because you've been growing quite a lot.
Yeah. So the first one was in my house. As I said, I just invited a bunch of people around, and we had about 25 people there. We're expecting about 2,800 individuals next year, which will be about 5,500 footfall.
Wow, that is some growth.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we just wish we'd moved it out of my house because it's getting a bit crowded.
Yeah, I mean, do you have a really big house? Do you live in a sort of mansion down in Harrogate?
No, I just keep putting extensions on the back of the house. It's fine.
Nice.
The sort of extension where you have to hide it behind hay bales, or
yeah, it's just an extended log storage place. That's how I get away with. That's how you get away with the planning. So.
Sounds rustic.
It is. It's definitely a bring a jumper kind of event. We haven't got that many heaters, and with that much wood lying around, it's probably quite dangerous. So.
Fair enough. Well, I'm going to be down at Airecon myself next year, so I will definitely bring some jumpers. Thanks for joining us on the cast this week, and let's get to it.
These are the headlines for the week of the 25th of November, 2019. The industry distances itself from designer after abuse allegations. Combat Commander and Dominant Species designer passes, and Magic the Gathering joins the greats in the Toy Hall of Fame. All this and more on this brand spanking new episode of Brainwaves.
So at the top of the headlines this week, we have abuse allegations that have rocked the board game industry. Allegations of physical, sexual and emotional abuse have been made against board game designer JR Honeycutt by Victoria Mann of Board Game Solutions, involving a relationship they had whilst Honeycutt was still married, and events that transpired during and after they called it off. Honeycutt replied in a now deleted post accepting some of the incidents that Mann alleged, but denied any of the abuse allegations. Waitress Games, that's Honeycutt's company, is going to stop operating, and a number of board game studios and designers have publicly cut ties, including Restoration Games, Eric Lang, Pandasaurus Games, and the Indie Game Alliance, alongside Rob Davio as well, I think. We reached out to Victoria to ask for permission to link to her original article that appeared on Medium, and she also recommended a post by Fundamentals, which we will link both of those in the show notes. We'd advise there's a content warning in there for the sexual and emotional abuse allegations that are in there. There's quite a lot of heavy stuff, so read with caution. And we'd just like to have a wee chat about highlighting why conventions and any gathering of games really should have anti-harassment policies in place, as it can help deal with these kind of allegations when they arise. Mark, do you have something in place like that for Airecon?
Yeah, so we consulted someone, Esther McVeigh, and she was really helpful in helping us put together one. We had a basic one when we first started, but as you grow, there's more risk and more things. So I think it's important, once you've written it, to revisit it every year, which is what we do. We go back and look at it, and is this still fit for purpose? Do all the volunteers that we have, because we have about 50 volunteers, do they all know what to do if something does come up? And just is there anything else we can do to help people feel safe and feel like they can bring things up if it happens? Thankfully, we've not had anything big, nothing certainly of this scale. But we hope that just having a strong policy in the first place means that it's preventative, that people know that we're going to deal with stuff. So it's very important.
Of course, yeah, putting it out there that you have that policy in place is like a warning to those who might try something. Yeah,
and then we actually use our ticketing system for everybody that's pre-booked. We send them all an email beforehand with this, just the week before, reminding everyone this is what it is. So it's not just hidden away on our website. It's great. More kind of being proactive about putting it out there.
Yeah, I really like that idea. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is Iain from the editing suite. I'd just like to add a wee correction to that last piece. Mark mentioned that he consulted with Esther McVeigh, who is actually a politician. What he meant to say was he consulted with a lady called Esther McCallum Stewart, and we will link to her profile in the show notes. Thank you.
It is my sad duty today to report that Chad Jensen, the board game designer predominantly known for his wargaming work with GMT Games, has died aged 52. Chad designed the influential Combat Commander series, which started with Combat Commander Europe in 2006, as well as designing games such as the very highly regarded Dominant Species in 2010, the most recent expansion of which, Dominant Species Marine, was out this year. He was given a diagnosis of late-stage cancer in May, and I have to say the community rallied around him. There was a crowdfunding campaign to help with his medical expenses, but sadly it was not to be. His partner and co-designer Kai said 52 laps of the sun and then off to the stars. Our thoughts are with the family at this time, and he's a great loss for the community.
So we've started with a couple of tough pieces of news, but now let's go on to something a little bit lighter. Mark, you've got some news from the National Toy Hall of Fame in the USA.
Indeed. So they have chosen Magic the Gathering from 12 finalists. 3 of them have made it into their National Toy Hall of Fame, and Magic the Gathering was one of those 3. The curator, Shannon Simmons, said, Magic the Gathering changed the landscape of collectible card gaming, and it's become a part of pop culture, leading to book series, electronic games, and even a series on Netflix. The fact that it continues to maintain popularity is a testament to its revolutionary gameplay and constant evolution, making it engaging for beginners and experts alike. The other finalists were Matchbox Cars and The Colouring Book, which both made it in. There was also Care Bears, Jenga, Masters of the Universe, My Little Pony, Nerf Guns, and Risk, which didn't make it in this time.
I believe there was also the smartphone and the top, which I assume is the spinning top.
I hope it's the spinning top.
Yeah, I hope so, because I don't know what other kind of top, unless it's like a t-shirt, but I don't know if that's a toy.
Yeah. Smartphone seems like a funny thing to go into Toy Hall of Fame, anyway.
Yeah, I wonder if they mean something else by that. That does seem like a weird thing.
I think it's probably a smartphone. It's become very, I don't want to say ingrained, because that sounds possibly a negative thing, but it's become very ingrained in culture for several ages. The age at which people are getting phones now has dropped. There's people I see at where I work who are 7 or 8 and they have phones, and I go, interesting.
Well, moving on from the headlines, let's get into the news.
We're going to stay with Magic the Gathering for a little bit right now, as at Magic the Gathering Mythic Championship 6, the Magic player Autumn Burchett has been asked by Wizards of the Coast to remove cards from their deck which they marked to promote trans rights. Now, it's important because Burchett said they were asked by Wizards themselves. Wizards of the Coast owns Magic the Gathering, not the championship judge, to remove them, because they were altered, and they said there was no explanation given. Now, there are rules for sanctioned Magic the Gathering tournaments that allow artistically altered cards. The rule is, artistic modifications are acceptable in sanctioned tournaments, provided that the modifications do not make the card art unrecognizable, contain substantial strategic advice, or contain offensive images. Artistic modifications also may not obstruct or change the mana cost or the name of the card, and I believe it is the latter point that Wizards seem to be operating under. There has been some consternation because there has been in previous Magic tournaments, there has been players who have altered cards to support, for example, the protests in Hong Kong, and were lauded for it. So there might be a little bit of contention there. However, on November the 9th, there was a compromise struck between Birchett and Wizards of the Coast, which allowed Birchett to alter different basic land cards that didn't obstruct the mana base or name on the card. So the political point can be made, and they can still keep playing.
Better than Blizzard did with all their compromises over Hong Kong protesters. If you've ever never looked at the Magic the Gathering alternate art scene, I do suggest that you do, because there is some absolutely amazing stuff out there. Some really, really clever alterations of cards, like extending art down into the card, because that's perfectly legal and that kind of thing. Just some fantastic artists out there, and interesting to see those rules used to sort of support different causes.
Well, from one company making a lot of money and Wizards to another company making a lot of money that also involves Wizards. Iain, I believe you have some news out of Nottingham and Games Workshop.
Yes, Games Workshop, maker of many, many miniature games, including Warhammer and Warhammer 40k, have seen profits and sales soar in the 6 months to December. Profit before tax will rise 35% and won't be less than 55 million. Their share price has risen about 17.3% on the news of these profits. GW is estimating sales of around 140 million at least from June to December, 12% increase. Investment director at investment platform AJ Bell, Ross Mould, says Games Workshop's niche focus on gaming miniatures has helped it survive the high street turmoil hitting retailers. Great news for Games Workshop. They've been doing a really good job over the last few years, bringing back, I think we've talked about this on the cast before, bringing back things like Blood Bowl, Necromunda, appealing to more of the sort of niche product in their collections. Warcry seems to have been extremely successful for them as well. And they have recently just announced that they are going to be bringing the Old World back. So if you're not familiar, the Old World is basically the original Warhammer fantasy setting where Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay and their original battle games happened in, and they basically exploded that world a few years ago, literally, and created the Age of Sigmar game, which is sort of a new version of Warhammer, but set in a new setting called Age of Sigmar.
It's a continuation somewhat of it.
Kind of, sort of. Hard to tell sometimes, I think, but that's another rant altogether. But yeah, so they're applying to bring that back in a few years' time in a sort of like the way the Horus Heresy game is to 40k, I guess, in that way. Do you play any sort of Games Workshop games, Mark?
Not anymore. It was definitely how I kind of cut my teeth when I was down at college and played those original sort of probably not the original 40k games, but certainly early versions of them. So, and I was at GW a couple of years ago, went there, and it's just an amazing place to go, see their visitor centre and everything, and see all the lore and these big dioramas that they have. It's pretty crazy, and we got to meet the I don't know who he was, some big guy there. He was telling us, the decision about changing the names of the shops to the Warhammer shop.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he said basically it was all based on around, because a lot of GW players, it'll be their parents that buy stuff for them. And so, and they could never remember the name Games Workshop. They would always just say, "Where's the Warhammer shop?" And that was kind of behind their reasoning. So that was quite interesting.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, I've heard that before. It's a really savvy piece of name changing. It's really quite smart.
Yeah.
So Jamie, from the old world to the new, and new technologies allowing us to play games in different ways, I believe Amazon Alexa is going to choo-choo down the line.
Oh, I have 2 pieces of technology news for you. I'm going to start with the one you just alluded to very, very subtly. It was lovely, I got to say. Days of Wonder.
I'm a professional.
I know you're a professional. Days of Wonder, that wonderful company, has announced a partnership with Amazon to allow their voice assistant, Amazon Alexa, to teach, moderate, and play Ticket to Ride and Ticket to Ride Europe. Now, Alexa will help teach the game, which includes setup and score moderation throughout, which also includes the longest route, so you don't need to spend a bit of time going, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, never mind. It will also play thematic sound effects and music during the game, if you feel that might add to the ambiance of being railroad barons. If you're also playing with less than 5 people, Alexa can join in as another player. Now, of course, if you, dear listener, are listening to this in your house on speakers out loud, and you have an Amazon Alexa, it would be very cruel of me to say something like, Alexa, play the game Ticket to Ride. That would be cruel. That'd be cruel. And if, I'm going to speak as a cynic for a second. I think this idea, using something like Alexa to teach, to moderate, to join in as well, the idea is something that DICE have been trying to do for a while now. But, Amazon has a frankly ridiculous amount of money, and Days of Wonder has a great deal of clout in the industry. So I'm kind of not surprised that they've cut the middleman out and forged ahead with this, and it's probably the first of many that we're going to see.
Yeah, I can see this happening a lot more down the line. If this is successful, if this works, and I don't have an Alexa myself, but I'd really like to try this. I've got friends that do, so I have to find a copy of Ticket to Ride and then try it. But yeah, really interesting development. And like you say, DICE has been trying to do this kind of thing for the last few years, and we were quite enthusiastic about DICE, but they do seem to kind of dropped off the face of the planet a little bit, and they don't seem to really be bringing what they said they'd bring to market. So I think that they have basically died off. You said you had 2 bits of news for us, Jamie. What's the second?
I do. Sorry, it's a bit like train there. Now, I wonder if several years ago you remember a company called Niantic released a game called Pokemon Go.
Never heard of it.
Nope, never. They also released a game called Harry Potter Wizards Unite. That apparently existed. But Niantic has now announced that they're going to be bringing out a new game. And why, Jamie, are you saying this on a board game podcast? Well, it's a very good question, non-existent other Jamie. They have partnered with the company Catan, formerly Settlers of Catan, to bring out Catan World Explorers, an augmented reality game bringing the world of Catan to our world via the medium of our smartphones. Players will collect Catan resources throughout the world, with some regions having more resources than others, meaning players will have to, surprise, surprise for Catan, trade. To quote from Catan World Explorers page, you'll bargain with entertaining in-game characters who are just as strategic as real-life ones. Now, roads and settlements will be built, victory points will be gained, and you'll join a team, possibly similar to Pokemon Go's teams, to compete globally or in personal matches with friends. Now, the game was teased by Catan itself in October, but the connection with Niantic was not, released or made public until late November, about the time this cast was being recorded, actually.
Let me get this straight. This game is going to encourage you to go up to strangers and ask them for wood. Have I got that right?
Or ask them if they've got wood for your sheep.
Hey!
Yeah.
I think it might be you have to click on other virtual people who will be able to virtually trade.
This sounds kind of mad.
I mean, either... yes, and at the same time... Huh?
Yeah.
I wonder if it'll be because if you've played the app version of Catan, there's these helpful people in that. And they're they're a little bit annoying. They pop up every now and again, and you play against them and things like that. They actually made them into, I think it's called the Friends of Catan, like a little mini expansion for Catan that was like this deck that just gave you special powers. But
Oh, right.
Okay.
maybe it's those guys. There's about 12 of them.
You know what? I wouldn't put it past it.
They're like Clippy. I see you're trying to build the longest road. How can I help?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see where the game is right now. Like, if the point is you are basically turning the whole world into a Catan board, like, building roads and stuff, that's fine. But say I build a road outside my house. Is that just for me, or is that for everyone else on my team? But what if there's more than one person on my team living in the same area and we want to build a road there? Does it just get a better road, or is it just one road and everyone goes, nope, that's it, it's all done?
Well, you'll just have to give it a shot when it comes out, Jamie.
I'll need to get a smartphone then.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll give it a shot when it comes out then.
Yes, I live in 1999, ladies and gentlemen. Well, going from the world through your smartphone to the world sort of through your video screen. Iain, I believe you have some news from Rebellion.
Yes, Rebellion, the company behind Sniper Elite, Strange Brigade, and Evil Genius video games, as well as the 2000 AD comics, has announced a spin-off arm called Rebellion Unplugged, which is going to produce board games and collectibles based on their IPs. Already announced is a Sniper Elite board game. This is going to be available to play at PAX Unplugged before Kickstarter next year. So yeah, interesting to see a computer game company actually form a fully fledged arm of its business to put out some board games rather than getting someone like Fantasy Flight or Wizards to produce games for them. Do you think we're going to see more of this kind of thing, guys? More computer game companies creating in-house wings for board games as the industry grows?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, we had the thing with Mechs versus Minions already.
Yeah, of course,
That was kind of that. And,
yeah,
you know, if it's... These guys already have all game theory and everything in-house, like, why wouldn't they just turn it to, you know, to analog stuff rather than digital stuff?
Anyway, Mark, we've been carrying out some experiments recently in the sort of bowels of the building. So if you'd just like to come downstairs, we'd just like to get your thoughts, so to speak, through our new thinking cap downstairs. So yeah, if you just put this on your head, and Jamie, if you put that on your head, and I'll put this on my head.
Ow, 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 ow. Okay, I'm fine.
Yeah, I need to sort that bit out. Yeah, it's uncomfortable to say the least. Oh, you might need to shave your head afterwards. The sort of gluey stuff gets a bit sort of
you
kind
say
of
that
in there.
now? Fine, okay.
Thinking cap activated.
Yeah, so this will allow us to share our thoughts, ask questions, and share our experiences. So Jamie and I thought we'd share our experiences of the Glasgow Games Festival we were at recently. It's a small convention in Glasgow. And so if we concentrate really hard, if we think really hard together, we can sort of experience that together. And we had a great time there, didn't we, Jamie? It was fantastic. And of course, Mark can now see the images of us playing these games and being at Glasgow Games Festival.
Yeah, it was great. Had a really good time. Got to see a number of people. Got a good sit down, good nice chat, and yeah, just had a good day. I only played 4 games over a period of about 10 hours, but you know what? It's good fun.
Yeah, it was good to see people and see the folks from the Unlucky Frog and various others through there. And it got me thinking a little bit, and I'd like to sort of probe your mind now, Mark, about sort of conventions and how you go about putting together a convention. Like, what were your sort of like, you alluded to earlier in the cast that you started out basically just in your house. What made you want to take that experience and do Airecon for like, turn it into like a big convention?
We had no great ambitions when we started, so I did my house one, and in that time I'd kind of gone to Games Expo, came back from Games Expo. This was a few years ago now, probably 2014-ish. Came back and just looked around for what other things there were that we could go to, and there wasn't really anything at the time other than the kind of these small, sort of very insular cons where just the same people go every year, which, you know, is great. Like, those guys do really well. They don't have to do any advertising or anything like that. But there wasn't anything else really, certainly not up here in Leeds. So I just said to my friend who had also gone to Games Expo, we just had such a brilliant time there, and we said, shall we just start something ourselves and see what happens? And there was no kind of great ambition. It was just have a go. And so we did. And it just kind of grew from there, really. And so it was, I kind of mentioned earlier a bit about Essen as well. Like, Essen is awesome, obviously. And you go and it's huge and it's spectacular, and but it's not my kind of convention. And if I didn't have to go because of work, I probably wouldn't. I think everyone should go probably once just to see it, because it is amazing. You know, like they think they had about 200,000 people going this year.
Wow.
But I found when I went a few years ago, I hardly played any games. It was really hard to get into games. It was all just about the buying and the kind of, you know, it was that kind of side of things. So I'd been to Games Expo, had a brilliant time playing games, went to Essen, had not such a good time, even though I was among thousands of games. So that kind of shaped what we wanted Airecon to be. And so we decided to make it a gaming focus, like playing game focused, but we still have some other trade stuff and some special events and a bunch of other stuff going on as well. But the vibe is very much more kind a bit calmer, a bit more chilled out, and so that's how we decided to do it. But I think there's quite a few now that have popped up over the last few years, where people have just had the same sort of thing of just let's have a go and do our own thing and see how it goes. So it's.
Have there been any sort of problems you've had with growing the convention over the last few years, from 25 people to however many thousand it is now?
Yeah, I guess because we've seen like quite big growth every year. It's about 40% every year we've been growing. It's not like you can just do the same thing twice. Like we can't just get used to being in one place. We made the decision quite early on. We had done a couple in a church hall near where we worked. But then we made the decision to actually go into a big convention centre, which was a big step. And suddenly our hall costs went from £100 to £10,000, and have gone up every year since. But we wanted somewhere where we knew we could grow into, but it still had the kind of spaces, and that's why we actually moved to Harrogate rather than Leeds, which is where we live, or Bradford, where we worked at the time. And so that's one of the biggest challenges for us, is just how do we predict the growth and not completely overspend so that we go bust, and these kinds of things. But it's there's 4 of us now that are kind of on the team, plus we have some other people that are kind of regular super volunteers, I guess. We have someone that runs our volunteer team, and she's awesome. She's literally just had a baby about 3 months ago, and she's still on it, still wants to come back in March and run the volunteers. So the gaming community is certainly really helpful. Like, we have all these people that come and help us and have been really supportive. So I think that's the biggest challenge, though, that, like I said, is just trying to anticipate that growth, and how we manage that, really.
Yeah.
If anyone out in the podcast sphere is listening to this and might be thinking, I want to create my own convention, even as a small thing, getting a big group of people, what would you say to someone, just with your experience, what would you say to them?
Yeah, so the most useful thing we did actually was we did quite an extensive bit of research before we started anything, and this is where we just went and visited a bunch of local gaming groups, met loads of people, and just spoke to them and said, what kind of thing do you want? And just heard from other people before we started anything. We then spent a whole weekend just going around venue after venue. We saw about 30 different venues, something like that was whittled down from a list of about 150. And we had all these criteria and things like that, ease of accessibility and just a bunch of stuff. So I think that kind of planning and that research is really helpful. But at the same time, I'd just say, like our first couple, like I said, my first one was in my house. After that, it was in this church hall, so we couldn't actually do the convention on Sunday. So it was a Friday and Saturday convention, which was kind of funny. But then as we moved into the convention centre, it's become 3 days. And now we're talking about whether we make it 4 days, because people love gaming.
They do.
Yeah. So I think that's, just do your research and just have a go. Like I said, there's gamers everywhere.
Yeah, I remember talking to David Wright about Tabletop Scotland when he was setting up the first one, and I think it took them ages to sort of identify the place in Perth they're in now, because they've been around so many different places, like looking in Edinburgh and Glasgow, and the costs obviously in Edinburgh and Glasgow are astronomical for hire, and sort of Perth worked out quite well because it's kind of in the middle and it's relatively easy to get to from Edinburgh and Glasgow, and that worked out pretty well. But they did a lot of research. Dave's very meticulous. I've seen his color coordinated planning charts and all sorts, and it's quite extensive, the amount of work he does for Tabletop Scotland. And it's worked out really well. Tabletop Scotland's been a great addition to the con scene.
Yeah, and I guess that'd be another bit of advice, like, do it because you love it or love kind of putting on an event. Don't do it to try and make a job out of it or to try and make a living or become a millionaire. It's not going to happen, unfortunately. Yeah. I think I know the Games Expo guys quite well, obviously, and I think it took them something like 9 years before they could pay either of them a salary.
Yeah, I think it's only in the last 2-3 years they've gone full time on that, pretty much. Yeah, from what I know. Yeah. I remember when it was in a tiny Masonic hall in the middle of Birmingham. I remember going to a UK Games Expo in a Masonic hall, and it was in there for a couple of years. That was a strange place, but it was good. But it was quite strange. And then
yeah. So for us, it's almost like we have a second job, really. Like we all have full-time jobs, and then we have this on the side because it just never stops. But it's good. We love it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to coming down to it next year. I've been meaning to come to it for the last couple of years, and it's just not quite worked out. But yeah, I'll definitely be down in 2020.
Awesome.
So that should be good fun. Well, thanks very much for taking the time to sit in our chairs, Mark, and answer some questions.
Thinking cap deactivated.
Can I take this off?
I guess so, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you can. You're the guest. I, unfortunately, cannot.
Yeah. Well, you can take it off, Jamie, but the hair is coming with it.
But my hair, my source of power.
It's an experimental glue solution I'm using.
What's it made of? Is it interns?
Look, you got to use those bodies for something, right?
Moving on.
Let's wrap this up. Definitely not murdered any interns and turned them into glue. That'd be crazy.
Oh, it's the end of the podcast, and it wouldn't be the end of the podcast without some Monopoly news. Oh, yeah.
Get off the mic. It's my turn.
What? No, Iain.
Oh.
Iain. Ow, my source of power!
Enough Monopoly news, folks. It's time for the news you all really want. It's time for Cluedo news. Yes, that's right. It's Cluedo. D&D is back, exchanging the traditional Tudor mansion for the iconic Baldur's Gate. An adventurer from the party, i.e. players, has been secretly killed and replaced by a minion of the archdevil Zariel. The aim is to find out where, who, and with what, because it's Cluedo, or Clue if you're in America. The weapons will be Greatsword, Demon Longbow, Silver Claw, Mastercraft Scimitar, Horn of Blasting, or Censer of Remembrance. Is that a big candle?
No, I believe the censer is... Sorry, jumping back on the mic here. Yeah, the censer is like the thing you see priests swinging in...
Oh, okay, right.
Catholic churches.
Little Calamshan, the docks and Basilisk Gate will take the place of billiards room, kitchen and the lounge. And there was a previous D&D version of Clue in 2001, but this is following in the wake of the D&D resurgence, of course, that started by 5th edition and things like Critical Role.
Just before we go... Quick shout out to our executive producers, the Lucky Sparrow Gaming Cafe, and to all our Patreon supporters. Thank you so very much. You have no idea how amazed this bearded and now hairless idiot is that you like listening to us, and thank you very much from the bottom of our hearts. Also, another huge shout out to James Naylor and the team for Magnate, the First City. It has just gone up on Kickstarter as of the day of recording. He was on our last podcast. I think you should go and back it. I played it for the first time at Glasgow Games Festival. It's a good game. It's a very good game. And I won.
Yes, he did win. And it's fully funded, and James will be knocking down the stretch goals soon. So congratulations to James and the team. Mark, thank you so much for coming back from Essen and reporting back and giving us some convention tips. Thanks for joining us on the cast this week. We'll have to push you back out into the world. What convention are you going to next?
I'm actually going to a very small one, a bit secret. It's called Gearstones, out in the middle of the Yorkshire Dales. So that's going to be exciting. Just a bunch of people in a barn playing games.
Awesome. And if people want to find yourself and find out about Airecon, where can they go on the internet?
So the best place, the website is airecon.uk. That's with an E, so AIRECON.uk, and we're on the big 3 social medias as Airecon UK as well.
Fantastic, and there'll be loads of people down there next year, including myself, so hope to see some of you there, listeners. So, thanks very much for listening, everyone. If you like what you've listened to, then the best way to help us out is to share the podcast and drop us a review and rating on iTunes. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, just search for The Giant Brain. Our website is giantbrain.co.uk, and you can get in touch with us via email at giantbrainuk@gmail.com. Thanks very much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.